It's called Elevating You. We want to help people reach their peak professionally, personally, et cetera. You and I are both keynote speakers. We travel the country. We each do workshops based around leadership, communication. Our backgrounds are tied to marketing and communication. I spent 25 years in TV. You were an executive at NASCAR, just to give people a little bit of a background on what we do. Working for an ad agency, you spent a lot of time there and built big brands and wrote a book called Reputation Shift. And so we've kind of merged together to do this. We kicked this thing off last week, and our big topic last week was communication skills and why they're so important, and more so than ever before. And so what I wanted to do is start off with this, because we actually gave people who joined in an opportunity to ask us questions, and they could either do it by Facebook, and you can do that, folks, right there on the Facebook Live. Send us a question on the bottom and we'll try to answer that. Or you can email us at info@kannadvisory.com. Now, last week we got some questions, and you have one and I have one. So I'm going to let you take yours first and we'll answer those. Then we'll move into this week's topic.
Now that sounds great, and appreciate the folks who did take the time to shoot us an email and check in. There were a bunch that came. I mean, the one that I thought was the best is, when are you guys going to get nominated for your Facebook Live Emmy? I mean, that, hey, our first show out of the box, right?
Yeah, I'm sure that was one of them.
All right, so the one that jumped out to me, Kraig, was a really interesting one that was centered around leadership, and the question was basically, as a leader, we have to communicate effectively to our teams, especially in today's COVID-19 environment. Is there a way I can avoid being a poor communicator at this time? And I thought it was interesting, like, how can I avoid being a poor communicator? And what you can take that a couple different ways, right? There's the message. There's, again, how you say it in your rate, your tone, your delivery. But what jumped out to me that I think is an interesting sort of like pivot on the question is that I think people are suffering from and leaders are challenged by communications fatigue, is what I'll call it, right? Especially during a crisis. So many messages being like rifled at us right now of updates and what to do next, and here's what we're doing, and all of these different messages related to COVID. And yes, it's easy to become either a poor communicator or one whose message gets drowned out because it's, oh, here's another one. Oh, here's another long email. Here's another long email.
Right.
So my answer to this and suggestion and encouragement is that as communicators, we have to realize that we've got a huge toolbox of ways to communicate messages. Oftentimes we rely solely on one or two, and that's typically written on an email or spoken. But I would suggest then that if you do have a number of messages that you're giving out to your team, if you're responsible for doing that, you think about the cadence, meaning the timing of the messages, and then think about, is this a message that is best delivered through an email? Is it something that's through a conference call or Zoom? Is it something I can shoot a quick 30-second video and send it out that way? Could this be a graphic, an infographic? There are several different ways that we can convey and communicate a message. And I think as leaders and communicators, it's incumbent upon us to be creative and use the wide range of options we have, not just spoken and written, but visual, again, with videos and infographics, things of that nature. So that's how I'd answer that.
Yeah, that's good. The question that I took from last week that I received was, give me one thing that, I could take and we could all improve in our communication. So one thing we could all do to improve.
Just one thing, Kraig.
Yeah, that's one. And to me, that's actually pretty easy. I think we have to think about outcome first. And so it doesn't matter if you're talking to somebody, in your family, or talking to somebody that you work with, or maybe you're giving a speech or a presentation. If we want to communicate better, what do we want the outcome to be? What do we want to do to make people feel a certain way? What do we want to say that will make them say something, or a call to action that'll allow them to do something? So we need to think about outcome first. That always seems to shape kind of where I'm going to go with my message. If I think, all right, I'm going to go do this talk. I've got this audience of 500 people. How do I want them to feel? What do I want them to say about the talk that I just gave? And the other thing that we can all do, so that's my one thing, by the way. But if I'm going to put a couple tentacles off of that, listen better is definitely one of them. Because I think oftentimes we're so worried about the message we're going to send, and we don't think about, listening to what other people are saying too, which helps us shape what we're going to say. So we all have to be better listeners. And I shared this last week. I'll say it again. It's a study by Carnegie, and they came out with this data that suggested that 85% of all of our success is based on our personality and the way we communicate. Only 15% is based on, our toolbox, if you will, or our intellectual knowledge. So to me, that says a lot, that how we succeed, how we're looked upon, how people, value us or not, is based upon our personality and how we communicate. Those are the things that stand out. So again, appreciate everybody's questions. And those are last week's questions, the best of the best that we had. And I want to move on to today. Okay. So again, to everybody, thanks for being with us. We call this Elevating You, and it is all about your, right, Mike? We're helping people with their career, their personal growth in a career space. We've all been through a lot of different things, a lot of different jobs, had our own backgrounds. But I think the most important thing, and this is why we want to talk about it today, is how do we stay relevant? How do we stay relevant in an ever-changing environment? And today, I think it's more important than ever. I don't know how you feel about this, but with COVID-19 hitting upon everybody, this topic has become something that I think a lot of people need to take stock of, because people are being furloughed, people are being laid off, and more so than ever, we have to find a way to say, how do I stay on the boat? How do I stay in my job? There's people that are nervous that their companies are going to go away, that their jobs are going to go away. And so for those people who are working, all right, how do I advance my skills? How do I make myself, quote unquote, indispensable? How do I stay relevant in that space? And I think it's an interesting topic. And I've got some things I want to share, but I want to get your opening thoughts on that. And of course, as I put here, if there's any questions that you have for us, two ways you can do it. One is live right here via the Kann Advisory Facebook page, and then you can email info@kannadvisory.com. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, especially in these days, Kraig, where there was a time where people had a greater sense of job security because of the work they were doing and the work environments in which they were operating. And I'm a big believer, having made a personal career pivot several years back, coming upon the realization that security in a position or a place of employment is relative, and it's not always in our control. But what is, it's our ability to interact and to your point, create relevance. When we were talking about this idea and making this a topic, what I did is, just for fun, I went to the dictionary to look up relevance. What does relevance mean? And the definition I got on it was the quality or state of being connected. Quality or state of being connected. And that kind of struck a chord. Just like, so how do you stay connected in this hyper-connected world in which we live? And quite honestly, connected in a way that's meaningful. Because my opinion, man, this is my opinion, is that social media gives us a false sense of connection to people. It's just sort of like we're skipping stones over the relational piece of, like, we're just keeping it high level enough. We like a post, we comment, we do something. But I'm thinking of, connections that deliver value. And that's the other tie back to relevance in your career and your life. It's connection that's driving value. And value means a lot of things to a lot of different people. And that ties back, in my opinion, to your point earlier about listening, being able to listen and your communication skills, because value means different things to different people. For some, it's emotional value, right? For others, it's work output and relational value. It's understanding where, again, my opinion and my experience has been, is being relevant in the present place with the people that you are connecting with.
Mm-hmm.
What do you
I totally agree with that. And I think one of the important things that, people need to understand is that there is competition out there at every corner. Okay. So
I'm with never.
When I go speak on college campuses and I have a bunch of students in there, or student athletes, it's funny because they'll always sit next to the person they're most comfortable with in an auditorium. They want to chat, or they want to know them. What they aren't realizing is that person sitting next to them is their competition for their job if they're in the same major. If we're in a work environment and there's people on a staff, on a team, they're all jockeying for the next promotion, or how can I show myself well, or what can I do? And relevance oftentimes comes from not just showing up, but what can you show? What can you deliver? How can you make an impact? I didn't just work somewhere for 4 years. What do I have to tangibly show somebody else about the value that I brought to the organization? So I think it's important not to just spend time, but to make effort to make a difference. There's a big difference in that. So we can throw this topic out there, obviously, right? And we can say, okay, this is great, et cetera. But we got to help people how they can do it, right? How can they be relevant in that space? So here's the one thing that stood out to me that I'm going to share right now, and that is you can be an industry thought leader. What do I mean by that? Well, let's use you, Mike. How many years have you been in your industry, would you say?
Over 25 years.
Okay. So in 25 years, doesn't matter if it's 25 or 5, we all have experiences. Are we ever taking stock of that? Are we writing them down? Are we sharing it? There are a lot of people that would benefit greatly by our experiences, by anybody's experiences. In your case, you wrote a book. You documented all the different things. I'm working on my own book, and we want to share those things. So what I do sometimes, I've got this little black book, and I write down my thoughts on various topics. It could be communications. It could be media coaching. It could be presentation skills. It could be personal branding. Maybe it's social media, broadcasting, whatever. And I write those down, and I always try to write them in, the old Twitter form of 140 characters or less, because that way I could tweet them. I could use them as a quote in a blog. I can use them as blog topics. I can do a lot of different things. So I think when we're talking about relevance, what are we doing with the experiences that we've had? What are we doing with all the things that we've learned? And how can we share those with other people? That's one way. Sharing through a blog, sharing through social media. Maybe it's even creating a presentation within your organization based around your skill sets. I'm not talking about somebody says, hey, guess what? I need you to do this presentation next week, because that's a request, right? That's part of your job. I'm saying, all right, what do I bring to the table that maybe some other people on my team don't? How can I put something together that we could do a lunch and learn, that all of a sudden I'm showing everybody in my company that I bring this value to the table and I'm relevant? That's the kind of stuff that comes to my mind. What are your thoughts?
I love that. I love that. And I'll share a personal story on this, because that message, that point hits so home to me. So I'm going back maybe 10 years or so ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, in my career. And I was running a successful division of an agency, and hitting all the marks, right? Getting all the work done. Our clients were happy. We're expanding and growing, the fee and the scopes and all the work. And I mean, on paper, on my scorecard, man, it's like, A. It was great. And when I got to my year-end review with the agency president and then the founder, he sat in on it. Man, I was feeling good. I was like, hey, this is perfect, man. I'm hitting all my marks. I'm on target, bonus. This is great. And everything was good except for this one comment that the agency founder said. And it might have been a throwaway comment because he didn't really go into more depth afterward. But he said, yeah, you're hitting all the marks, and that's great. He said, I just wish that you would embrace and be more of a thought leader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, well, what do you mean, man? I'm growing your business. We're killing it over here. It's great. The people, the motivation, everyone's great culture. But it didn't hit me because I took it in, not in the way he probably intended. I was like, what do you mean thought leadership? And it hit me. It's like, you know what? For me to get to the next level, for me to be seen differently within the organization, in the industry, amongst my team, et cetera, doing and growing the business and being there just wasn't going to be enough. I had to find a way to be a thought leader, to sit back and critically think about where things are going or what we could be doing differently, and being courageous enough to put that into the public space, because that's the scariest part, man. When I started my blogs or I put videos out, people would say, the hardest part for you must be writing the story or being in front of the camera or whatever that might be. And I said, no, actually, that's the easiest part. The hardest part is hitting post.
Right.
Because you're now putting it out there for people to judge, for people to read and look at through a different lens. And so I would layer on to your point, which I love about thought leadership. I think that's vital today, whether you have 5 years experience, 25 years experience, whatever, something in between. We all have something to share. We all come from a perspective and a place that can be impactful to other people. I would encourage you to please be courageous, to not fear other people's thoughts or feedbacks. Be open about it. Put it out for putting it out's sake, to share for your mission and your work. So, Kraig, I'm really glad that you brought that up. I love it.
Well, I think people feel pressure. So I use this little story when I'm doing my workshops. Okay, all based around communication and leadership. And if this is an escalator, I'm using this pen here, an escalator. And at the very top, these are the people that have been with a company for, say, 25 years or getting set to retire. These are the highest of the high, the corporate executives, the CEOs, whatever. Could be actually middle management or upper management who's getting ready to jump off the escalator and retire, okay? Now, back in the day, way back when my dad worked or your dad worked or our grandparents worked, they worked for a long time and they got the gold watch and the big party and the pension for life. Everything was comfortable. And all of a sudden, 2008, 2009 hits. We all remember the stress and all that stuff. And everything comes to a screeching halt. And a lot of those people that had retired lost a lot of money in the stock market. They wish they could jump back on the escalator of working. So if this escalator is the working force, think about it. Everybody's stopped. And that's kind of where we are right now. There are a lot of people who've been furloughed. There are a lot of people who are stuck. They can't move up. So if there's a hiring freeze and nobody's making any movement within the industry, the people that are at the top, they're afraid to jump off and retire right now because the stock market's not in a good spot and they're not going to benefit. The people that are here, they can't move up, right? So they're stuck there. Now you got the middle management or the people just below that would like to be moved up and promoted. They can't do that because there's not enough room. The people on the bottom are trying to move up. How do I get noticed? There's no space for them to go. Now you got to think about, how about the new workforce? What about college kids that are about ready to graduate and want to get into the industry? Very difficult to get onto the escalator in the first place. So when you're on it or trying to get on it, you've got to bring something extra to the table. It's not that easy. You've got to be special. You got to be unique. You got to bring a skill set that other people don't have. And if you want to stay on that escalator in a work environment where people are being furloughed, laid off, et cetera, how are you special? How are you indispensable? Now, I've said this before, this is a little bit harsh, but if everybody was on a boat and there were, 30 people on the boat, but there were only 15 life preservers and the boat was going down, what makes you believe that you deserve the life preserver? Why is the company going to keep you around? So relevance to me is about a skill set and a value that you can bring to the table that others frankly can't. And so when we talk about this, we're talking about skill sets that we have to develop and finding some other way to be better. In my world, that's presentation skills, public speaking, communication skills, et cetera. And I already shared that. 85% of our success based on the ability to communicate or our personality. And I kind of laugh today because we're doing all these webinars on trying to succeed, right, in a webinar-based society. A lot of this with a camera in front of us. And we got to find a way to make virtual presentations an advantage for us and be successful at it and blow the competition away. And that's not an easy thing for a lot of people to do. So those are some of the things that come to my mind about the topic of relevance.
Yeah, and you know, I got a couple other thoughts that you're popping for me here. One is that relevance should never be a power grab. Some people might think to be relevant, I have to be in control of a lot of things, and that to me is not authentic, because it really comes down to, I mean, that's people trying to grab up as much as they can to show by scale that they're important. It's truly, in my opinion, about the impact that you're making for the organization. To your point, if you're stuck on that escalator, as you were saying, or you're in that lifeboat, and I've talked to several people in the racing industry right now who are using the exact analogy of we can only keep so many, and they're only, you know, when the music stops, there are going to be so many seats left, right? Yeah. And, you know, it is about the impact that you're bringing every day. So I think that's important. The other piece of it that I focus in on when it comes to relevance has to do with relationships and being present. Because, and this is kind of a springboard to my work and reputation, is that your reputation is also a tool for relevance, for the work that you've done, the work that you do, the way that people have engaged and connected with you in a way that brought value to them. So if by building relationships and being present to understand the needs, you will continue to not only be relevant and creating value, but also finding ways that your skills, the things you do, can be of greater impact to the people around you, you know? And one of the things for me relationally that I like to do, quite honestly, and I'd love to say this was my idea, but it was a good friend of mine, Bob Bodine. He wrote the foreword for my book. You know, every Friday at noon, he shuts his office down. So, you know, people still stay there and they work, but their work is picking up the phone and calling friends and colleagues and contacts they haven't connected with, just to check in, to keep up, to be present and hear what's going on. And he said, you know, we're talking about that. I said, it's an ingenious strategy. And he said, you know what day, after we did this for several months, and what day of the week we started picking up more business? It was on Fridays after 12. Because he was creating relevance and value in people's lives by checking in, building relationships, which was then building reputation for him as well. So, you know, I love where this conversation's gone from, you know, the power of relevance, the impact, the value that it brings, the important distinction of it being a differentiator for people in this marketplace today, and not just today, every day, because we're going to get through this, but people are going to have a different lens and eye on how they're looking at organizations and people on their organizations. So I love the path that we've been on with this, Kraig. I hope people who have been watching and are getting the same value that personally I'm getting out of this right now. This is great.
Yeah, I don't think it's a choice. I think there's pressure actually on people today to try to find a way to step up. You know, you got to find a way to. Everybody that's around you, look, we're all about collaboration. We're not suggesting for a minute that you want to try to trump all your employees and you know, cast them aside and, hey, look at me and all that sort of stuff. No, what we're saying is
there are people doing that, but but there are people doing that.
There probably are. And what we're saying is find your greatest skill set. Somebody once told me that, every year you go in for your job review, okay? And you're there with your boss and so forth. And so let's assume for the sake of this that your boss is still the one that hired you, be it a year ago, 4 years ago, whatever, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Ask your boss why they hired you every year. And if the answer is consistently the same, it'll always keep your mind on where you are, why you were brought in, what your greatest skill set is, what the value is to the rest of your team. And you'll understand right there what your relevance to the organization truly is. But I do think, within a group, so let's say I'm running my department. I'll go back to my time at the LPGA when I was the chief communications officer, and we had a team of about 9 people. So many talented people. I mean, honestly, there were people way smarter than me in certain areas, which made our team so much better, right? So when it came to relevance, it's like, all right, I'm going to designate this to you because that's your greatest skill set that you bring to the table. And I know I can't do without you. You're going to be this person in creative communications. You're going to be this person that's the best we have at press releases, whatever it might be. And everybody kind of found their niche. What I'm saying is that it's important for you to take stock of your own self and go, all right, what is my greatest value that I can bring to this organization? All right. Now, based upon that, what can I build? What can I do that will allow the other teammates here and maybe wider than that, the company to benefit from that skill set that I have? Because there's a lot of people in companies that just haven't been tapped on the shoulder. We don't even know the skill sets that they have because they're maybe a little bit more of an introvert and they've never been given the opportunity to shine. What I'm saying is step forward, right? Raise the hand, say, Absolutely. Let me have that opportunity.
So that's the word initiative. And I love that. People taking that personal initiative and having, again, the courage, being courageous to step up and raise your hand and say, I'd like to try this. And the beauty of that is saying, I'd like to try this, and here's why. It may not work the first time out of the gate, but you're trying something different. You're thinking differently, getting back to thought leadership, getting back to being relevant. And in today's world, I believe like now more than ever, Kraig, and this is, where on my reputation talks, I speak on how the hyperconnectivity and all the different channels we have to connect can be reputational risk for people. You've got to be mindful. But I also believe with every fiber of my being that on the other side of that coin, all of the ways we can connect today can be differentiators for our own relevance. So be creative in thinking of, how can I be using technology to deliver more value to a customer, create more awareness for our company, be able to position our message differently, through digital and virtual events. We have a lot of opportunity to create relevance, but it gets back to being deliberate and intentional. And as you said, Kraig, so well, taking time to take stock in yourself. It's an introspective exercise as much as it is an external questioning, like you had mentioned, to ask your boss or whoever hired you, why did you hire me? Why am I here?
Yeah.
And I'd probably say if they've got to pause and look up at the ceiling and scratch their head, you may want to think about the relevance you're bringing to the party.
No doubt about it. So let's get back to the how you can do this. And I say put your name forward. I say industry thoughts. Taking your experiences, charting them down, best practices, things I've learned, and then sharing them via a blog. I mean, a lot of people have LinkedIn sites. Do you write articles? It doesn't take that long to put down something that you're able to share, and might even be something that you write that's been your experience over the last year. Let's say you're a salesperson and you were voted sales team member of the year. All right, how did you get there? What was it that you did that was innovative, different? How can you share that and help lift other people within the organization? What we try to create, I think, is word of mouth marketing. And it's bigger than it's ever been because We all talk. Everybody says something about something. If you can get people talking about the things that you deliver in a positive way, I'm not talking about gossip, because a lot of people do gossip about other people. And I'm talking about doing something, not waiting to get noticed, but doing things that makes people take notice, because then they'll go share that with other people. So try to spend your time focusing on some of the experiences you've had and the value that you bring, the things you've learned, positive or negative, right? Because some of the bumps in the road are of great benefit to all of us.
Absolutely.
None of our careers is a straight line. We've all had some bumps and gotten knocked off course a little bit, or something thrown at us that we weren't expecting. But how can we take that and help other people? You know, it might be as simple as saying, hey, guess what? 10 o'clock on Tuesday, we're going to have a little office roundtable. And I want to bring 5 people up there as a panel, and we're going to kick around topic of culture here within our organization. We're going to allow people to talk. Now, if you're the leader that started that, don't you think people look at you a little bit differently? I think that they do. And I think those are the kinds of things that are more important today than ever. Not raising your hand saying, look at me, I'm so great, but hey, I'm willing to maybe put myself out there, maybe a little vulnerable, but I'm gonna share some things with people because I believe I can bring something to the table. And we're gonna have a collaborative effort around it. It's not all about me. It's all about all of us, you know, kind of pulling from the same rope, and we're all gonna do this together.
Yeah. That is so well said. About finding those channels to get the word out and your thoughts, your position. I look at that as like, okay, great. So let's hit both sides. Your direction and guidance, and I'm going to call this more on the digital, right? Of where can you put out in a blog or look at these channels. I'll talk about the analog. Okay, I'll go back to the analog side of things, which is relational and being present can also help you create relevance with the people that you're interacting with in the moment, because you understand where they're at. You can recognize where there's value that you can create based upon that skill set that is truly yours, that makes you you. I like to call those your what's in your DNA. And I'm not talking about your X and Y chromosomes. I'm talking about the divine natural abilities that we all have, the things that we do, like breathing, and we don't realize it at times, right? And that's why it's really important that you do try to take stock in the things that make you different and unique, because that's going to help you stand out, stand up, and be distinct in this very cluttered and loud world, you know, because that's the truth, Kraig. I mean, there are a lot of people right now talking. And I really think that if you've got a message that's authentic, that creates value, and that's succinct, like you said earlier, let's just think about the blast. People aren't looking to read long missives. They don't want to.
All right, let me interrupt you for a second on that, because you just brought up people have a message. I think there's some people that probably listening to this going, okay, I don't know. What are you talking about, Mike, Kraig? I don't have a message. I go to work each day, right? I've got this job. I've been involved in this company for a long time. I don't have a message. I just do my job. Yeah. So what do you mean? Yeah. Everybody's talking, give me a message. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about, you know, if it's in your work, okay, as an example, or well, look, I'll go back for me. Like I had a 25-year career in motorsports and loved what I was doing. Mm-hmm. But I realized that through the experiences, through the relationships, through the work I had done, that I actually did have a message, because it's something that resonated with me. And it happened to be around that word reputation and brand, and the things that in this world that we all have to value more proactively, our reputation. So it took me a while to figure out what that message was going to be and how it was authentic to my voice. Yeah, I believe we all have that in us. We have to just sort of be more aware of the things that are lighting us up. Sometimes we don't even realize that. We're so busy on the freaking hamster wheel of work that it drowns out the things that really do light us up. And that's why I loved your point, Kraig, about taking the time to think about you and where you're at and what you deliver and the things that you're good at. Those are the things that are natural to you. So, do I have the exact answer for what your message is? No, because they're all different. I'm just encouraging all of us to recognize, to your point, that we all have a message within us. Mm-hmm. We all do. We all do. And it may not always be related to work. All right. So, I mean, this might be a little bit of a divergence to what we're talking about here in career growth, but I think there's a very direct correlation here with personal growth and professional growth. And, if your message doesn't work on directly for your business side, it still is valuable because you still have a platform to say it and speak it and share it and impact other people. So, I think now people, especially after COVID-19, are taking more stock on what's important to them. What is it that they can bring forth? And that's why I love the conversations that we're starting here, man, because we're both, curious. We're both looking for the where's the path going and where are we on it, So.
Well, it's funny. You're an author already, right? Your book's been published. It's awesome. You were on my podcast. Yeah, my book has been a work in progress for a while. And just this morning, I finished the last chapter on the second go around of the rewrite after the edits and all that stuff. And
awesome,
what keeps coming back is the importance of people taking ownership of themselves and saying, look, I can be this person who just kind of gets along and goes about my work and has my career, or I can actually step up my game and say, you know what? I actually am a brand. Now that's my reputation, but it's also how people look at me, what they say about me. Now to do that and to gather people around you to become, hey, I've got a following now, then you've got to deliver something. You got to have a message. You got to communicate. You got to be able to put something out there. And it all speaks to relevance. To me, I think people are feeling more pressure than ever. And by the way, I was looking down earlier because I was putting a comment there on Facebook. I want to say thanks to Debbie, to Scott, to Haley, to Kevin, people that I know have been chiming in, listening here. And that's really cool. And hopefully people will spread the word as we do these on Thursday mornings. But I just think if people we all want something more, right? And today, every day, I feel like I'm getting a phone call or hearing about another company who's going to lay off a bunch of people or furlough a bunch of people. Yesterday was 74% of their workforce, et cetera, that's going to be furloughed. Okay, if you don't want to be that person, you can't have the poor me attitude. You've got to find a way to grow. You've got to find a way to add some things to your toolbox. I think you brought this up earlier. Go to a conference, take a class online, do something that adds to what you can bring to the table. So those are kind of my thoughts.
Yeah. And Kraig, the challenge with what people are facing today is not just based on what's happened today. It's the culmination of what was happening years and months before. Now, what I mean by that is, I believe that, crisis isn't a lightning bolt in the bottle moment, right? It took gradual events to create that suddenly moment. Right. I believe it the same way with success, that, you hear of like the overnight success 20 years in the making. The idea that today people are experiencing this pressure and this fear, as you're saying, because perhaps they weren't thinking of relevance prior, a year, 2 years, 3 years before. So it makes me think of that phrase, an Eastern quote of, when was the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. When's the next best time? Today. So listen, this isn't going to be the last time in our lives, our careers, society, where there's going to be pressure in the workforce. We saw it in the recessions back in 06 to 12. We've seen it now. I mean, it's not going away. So the point is, if you haven't been building and intentionally thinking about your points of relevance and your skill set, your presence, the value and impact you bring, today is the best day. It's the right day. It's your day to start, to make a plan.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, all right, we're about to put the wraps on this thing, and I want to throw one final thought out. I'll let you do the same, and then I'll run through a couple things here for everybody. If you have questions, you can fire them at Facebook. I'll see them. Mike will see them. We can answer those right back, and we can also bring them up. We'll bring 2 to the table next week. So I hope you'll give us a couple questions on this topic of relevance. You can also email info@kannadvisory.com. Here's my final thought on this whole thing. So just about 4 or 5 days ago, my son, I have twins, 3 kids actually, but twins, and my son actually sent me his resume. He's working through grad school as a physician's assistant, and he's about to send out a bunch of applications for schools, and he's also looking for, he's working at a hospital now. He's going to work for another one. So I looked at his resume. It was good, by the way, but it made me think of something. It made me think, you know what? It's a great exercise. So we're talking today about relevance. I got a challenge for everybody. If they just sat down and said, you know what, I'm going to update my resume. I want to look at my resume right now. Mm-hmm. What does it say about me? What are the experiences that I've had? And if I have to go into an interview next week, or if I'm on a phone call in this time of great stress and anxiety about, do I still have a job? How can I keep my job? Will my company be laying off a bunch of people? And I have to sell myself. Does my resume do a good job of it? Where are there holes? What can I add? How can I make myself better? And think of it not on a piece of paper that gets, handed to somebody. Think of it on, all right, you've got that. Now I'm face to face with you, Mike Mooney, and I got to sell myself. And I got to be a storyteller about why you need me. But that's not the most important thing. It's not why you need me. It's what I can add for you. There's a difference. Here's what I can bring to the table. Here's the relevance you get from me if you bring me on. So I think the exercise of a resume would be a great thing for people to try to go to the next level.
That shifts the perspective, Kraig, and what you were saying towards the end, where people typically think of relevance of how it's helping me. Mm-hmm. If you were to flip it to how am I helping you? How am I delivering value? Where am I delivering value? I think that's a more relevant, perspective and place to come from. I would add on to that from an action standpoint and challenge the wonderful people who are spending time with us, which we're grateful for, and we're having a lot of fun with these conversations, to list 3, write down 3 messages, 3 things that you believe that you have a unique position on. Your experience gives you a different outlook. Perhaps you got an idea that relates back to your work, or it's a personal one. And then take each of those and start thinking about, okay, how can I bring that to life? What's one thing that I can do today, and then do it again tomorrow, and the day after that? So my point there is, you're focusing and you're taking stock on something that is special and unique to you and your position. Again, whether you've got 5 years experience, 10, 15, whatever it may be, we all have that message. What are 3? And then just start to break it down into steps. There's nothing, there's no secret or magic formula.
Yeah.
Right? It's just, what can you do today to bring it to life? And then what will you do again tomorrow? Kraig, when we talked a while back about this, about writing a book, people said to me, my gosh, how did you do it? That must have been just, such an incredible amount of time and overwhelming. And I said, well, there's no magic to it. I literally woke up every day at 4:45 in the morning, and I wrote from 5 a.m. to 6:15 a.m., 7 days a week for 7 months. Now, I don't share that like some humble brag or something like that. It's not at all. It's just saying that it just takes showing up and being consistent and intentional. And over time, you're going to really see, like, people look for the instant gratification today. Where's the instant relevance? It doesn't happen that way. It's the culmination of the gradualities. So I would say, break it to action steps, three points there. Be present, and then be consistent. because it's the long game you've got to be looking at.
I don't know how you only wrote for an hour and 15 minutes. I can't do that. I can do it a little bit on a proofreading thing, but writing, I need to sit there and I need to do it. Now, back when I was in TV, I'm on a deadline, right? I got to be out on the set by a certain amount of time. I got to have my scripts done by a certain amount of time. If I'm writing my book, which is funny because I challenged myself at 40,000 words. All right. It's done. Now, it might come back to me from the editors and they might knock it down again, but it's 58,000. And, but, I find myself with, different thoughts and different ideas and want to share and make it very interactive, I hope, with some challenges for people. But your book is great. Reputation Shift is the name of it. And a lot of people should check it out. Here's one thing I want to share with everybody, and that's my podcast, which I can bring this up because Mike Mooney, my partner in this, has actually been on the podcast. And one of the really good episodes, because this is kind of where this thing was all born, but it's called Tracks to Success for a reason. And I created this to give people with inspiring stories to share the opportunity to have a platform and be able to help people, how did they get where they got? And these are people from all walks. If you look at some of the upcoming guests, John Feinstein's written, he makes us look like nothing. He's written more than 40 books. Pat McGann is a stand-up comic who's been on Letterman and Stephen Colbert. Molly Fletcher is an inspirational speaker. She's a former agent in the world of sports and television, and big name people that she represented, Doc Rivers, Tom Izzo, John Smoltz, and she actually was my agent, so she had a lot less to worry about with me. Jason Benetti is the announcer for the Chicago White Sox, also ESPN, who has battled through having cerebral palsy and is one of the best announcers in the game. How did he get to where he got? And all the bumps in the road. Dan Mullen, the coach of the Florida Gators, is outstanding. And then coming up next week is Ken Casey, who you might not know, but if you know who the Dropkick Murphys are, that's a band in Boston. Yeah. He's the guy that founded it, and they're like a cult. I mean, they're global now, and they're doing a big concert on the 29th at Fenway Park with Bruce Springsteen. No fans will be there. It's going to be amazing. So my point in having Mike on is to share stories. My point in having these other people to share their inspirational tracks and stories. So I hope you'll download it at Apple Podcasts, or you can find it on YouTube and all these other places right here. With that, by the way, you had fun on my podcast, right?
It was okay. Man, I'm messing with you. It was awesome. Yeah. It was awesome. Dude, you were in your flow. This is your place in what you do. You were definitely born for it, man. It was a lot of fun.
It was great having you on there, and I learned a lot of things. Back to your story at working at small little shops and trying to be that sales guy wearing the name badge. I still remember that story, and then up to NASCAR and how you help people with their brands. Mike, here's our topic next week, career transitions. And you and I have both done it. You talked about 25 years with NASCAR. You talked about the pivot that you made and anchoring yourself down with this book and going into the public speaking realm and consulting and all those things. I went TV. I went to sports executive with the LPGA. And then now leading workshops, traveling, speaking, doing coaching, media coaching, et cetera. And what we both did was what's right below that, jumping into the uncomfortable, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And getting comfortable in the uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That'll be a fun conversation.
Yep, it is. Now, if people want to learn more or understand more about Mike and I, you can go to two different places. You can go to cannadvisory.com and my website, learn about the workshops that I do and speaking engagements and all of that. And then, Mike, share a little bit about your website.
Absolutely. Please hop over there, MikeMooney.com, and you can learn more about what I'm doing on that front. I've got a really cool platform I'm going to be launching in the upcoming weeks, and I'll share that. I'm really super excited about that. Virtual experiences that you can find there at my site, as well as on LinkedIn, my Facebook page, Mike Mooney Speaks. So please come on over and let's connect.
All right, Mike, I'm going to give you the last thought here. Anything you want to share with people? Less than a minute before we hop out of here.
I would say let's not forget the impact of the little things we do. I posted this the other day on Facebook and LinkedIn that, sometimes our little steps can help people move big boulders in their lives. So let's just be mindful of the words we use, the compassionate heart we share, and being present with each other, because your one little bit of encouragement or listening can make a huge difference to somebody else.
That's awesome. And next week, we're going to talk about transition in career. Today, our topic was relevance. I'll leave you with this. It's all about you. It is all about you. You are the chief marketing officer of your own brand. Now, to do that, that means you got to give something to market. You got to make yourself marketable. And that means taking stock of yourself. That means taking time to figure out, how can I get better? Where can I grow? Some of those things require being uncomfortable. We're not great at something. I'm not saying you got to pick something you're terrible at and try to move, as you say, a boulder to try to get better at it. No, take the things you're good at, become great. That becomes the star about you that people will say, I got to have this person. I got to keep this person. We can't do without this person. To me, that's what's the most important thing. But we've got to work at it. So that's where I wanted to go on the end. This is Elevating You, Reaching Your Peak. Kraig, Kann, Mike Mooney. And we're back. We will try to be back each and every Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern time. So you can grab a cup of coffee. He's got his, I got mine. And we hope you'll have yours. Spread the word and send us those questions. CannAdvisory.com, info@CannAdvisory.com. That's right, info@CannAdvisory.com. Or you can put them right there on the Kann Advisory Facebook page. Mike and I will answer some of those and bring them next week. Mike, man, it was fun. Be good.
Always, my friend. Always. Thank you, brother. You be good.
All right. To all of you out there, thank you. We're going to pop off our cameras and our microphones, and we appreciate you spending time with us today. Have a wonderful day.